Emily had a yearly tradition. On her birthday, she always made it a point to wake up to a surprise. It was never anything over the top, just something heartfelt. A handwritten letter, breakfast served in bed, maybe a little joke between us wrapped inside a small package. She used to say it was a sign that I understood her better than anyone. This year, I had everything arranged, a small velvet box resting on the nightstand, holding the gift she had been hinting about for months, and a carefully folded letter filled with words I had taken my time to write. But when I woke that morning, expecting to see her eager expression, I was met with an empty bed. Her side was cold. The bathroom door stood open. No sound of running water, no familiar morning hum, just stillness. Reaching for my phone, I saw her message, sent at 6:47 a.m. Hey, heading out early, swamped at work, love you. Something about it felt off. No emojis, no excited, can't wait to celebrate later, or playful, you're the best husband ever. Just a plain, detached text. I wanted to convince myself she was simply busy, and for hours, that's exactly what I did. But then at noon, another message appeared. Going to dinner with a coworker tonight for my birthday. Don't wait up. Love you. I stared at the screen, rereading it twice. No, let's celebrate tomorrow instead. Just a statement, a choice already made without me. And in that instant, something clicked in my mind, like a missing puzzle piece finally falling into place. I immediately texted back, all right, if that's how you want to spend your birthday, go ahead. Her reply came instantly. Thanks, babe. You're the best. I almost laughed, not a single question. As if she had expected me to just accept it. As if she had anticipated this exact reaction. I didn't respond. I didn't call. Instead, I grabbed my keys and drove. Emily thought she was untouchable. That much was obvious. But she had underestimated one thing, how much I noticed. And I had been noticing. The way she subtly tilted her phone away from me lately. Her sudden fascination with hitting the gym at night. The coworker she insisted was just like a brother, yet never mentioned by name. I parked 2 blocks away from the restaurant. She had no clue I was watching. When she walked in, her hair was styled differently. Nothing like how she ever wore it for me. The new dress, hugging her figure, one I had never seen before, fit her almost too perfectly. And then he arrived, tall, clean-shaven, carrying that smug confidence that told me everything before he even laid a hand on her. And touch her he did, a hand resting lightly on the small of her back as he guided her to the table, fingertips lingering just slightly when passing her the menu. But the final, undeniable proof? The way she leaned in, laughing softly at something he whispered. Her eyes fixed on his, as if he were the only person in the world. As if I didn't even exist. The worst part? She wasn't nervous. Not once did she glance over her shoulder. She truly believed I was at home, waiting for her. But tonight, Emily was going to realize just how wrong she was. I sat in my car, fingers tapping against the steering wheel, my pulse pounding in my ears. I was never the jealous type, never had been. But this wasn't jealousy. It was something sharper, something colder. I wasn't just witnessing my wife having dinner. I was watching her transform, becoming someone else. The way she laughed with him, it wasn't polite or forced, not the exhausted chuckle I usually got after a long day. No, this was different. Light, effortless, the kind of laughter that came naturally when someone made you feel alive. And then I saw it. Her hand resting on his forearm, a small, delicate touch. Like it had happened 100 times before. That was it! That was all I needed. I stepped out of the car. I wasn't going to sit in the shadows like some clueless fool in a bad movie. I wasn't going to wait for her to come home and serve me whatever excuse she had prepared. If she wanted to play games, fine. But we were going to play on my terms now. I walked into the restaurant. The warm lighting and gentle murmur of conversations did nothing to dull the sharp edge of what was about to unfold. They didn't notice me at first. She was too wrapped up in him, twirling a strand of hair between her fingers like a love-struck teenager. And him, he was soaking it all in, nodding along, hanging onto her every word. I took my time, stepping right up to their table. And then, finally, she saw me. Her gaze locked onto mine, and for the first time that night, I saw it. Fear. She froze, hand still midair as if time had halted for her, but not for me. Hey, babe, I said, my voice calm. Happy birthday. The guy, let's call him Brandon, because he looked like every arrogant, self-assured Brandon you've ever met, glanced between us, confusion flickering across his expression. Oh, he started. Emily's lips parted, then snapped shut. She looked like a computer struggling to process a corrupted file. I I thought you were home. I smiled. Yeah, I bet you did. Silence. The entire restaurant wasn't watching yet, but the people nearby, they were sensing it. Forks slowing, conversations dipping. Emily cleared her throat. This is just a work dinner. I tilted my head. Really? That's interesting because I could have sworn you said don't wait up. She swallowed hard. I didn't mean. I turned to Brandon. Hey, Brandon, quick question. He blinked. Yeah? Did she ever mention she was married? His expression stiffened. Emily shot me a sharp glare. Stop it. I ignored her, keeping my eyes trained on him. Well, I pressed. He hesitated before finally answering. She said you two were having issues. A low chuckle escaped me. Oh, did she now? Emily reached for my arm. Can we talk about this in private? I stepped back. Why? You didn't seem too concerned about privacy when you were practically holding hands across the table. A waiter hovered nearby, clearly debating whether to intervene or pretend none of this was happening. I gave him a polite nod. No worries, man. Just here celebrating my wife's birthday with her. Emily exhaled sharply, anger flickering in her eyes. Now you're making a scene. I leaned in just a little. Oh, sweetheart, I whispered. We haven't even gotten to the scene yet. Emily's face froze in that tight, forced smile she used when she was on the verge of losing it, but still wanted to appear composed. The problem was, I wasn't in the mood to let her keep up the act. Brandon shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his hand slipping off the table as if he didn't want to be caught too close to her. Smart move. Too late, though. Emily shot him a quick glance, one that screamed, "Don't say anything." I almost felt bad for the guy. Almost. All right, Emily exhaled, standing up so quickly her chair scraped against the floor. Let's go outside. She didn't wait for me to follow, just grabbed her purse and strode toward the exit. No goodbye to Brandon, no explanation. Just run, run, run. Not this time. I strolled after her, taking my time, letting every person in that damn restaurant get a good look at the woman who had just been caught. The moment we stepped outside, she whirled around, dropping the act. What the hell is wrong with you? She hissed. I let out a short laugh, shaking my head. Unbelievable. What's wrong with me? I repeated. Emily, you're the one sneaking around and I'm the problem? She folded her arms. I wasn't sneaking around. I told you where I was. I arched a brow. Oh, right. My bad. You did say don't wait up. So obviously that makes it perfectly fine to go on a date with some random guy. Her jaw tightened. It wasn't a date. Really? I shot back. Because from where I was sitting, it sure looked like one. She scoffed, rolling her eyes. You're being dramatic. Dramatic? Something inside me snapped. All right, Emily, let's cut the drama and lay it out plain and simple. I stepped in closer, lowering my voice. If I were sitting across from another woman, touching her arm, whispering in her ear, making her laugh like she was the only person in the world, would you be okay with that? Silence. That was all the answer I needed. She wouldn't meet my gaze. Her lips parted as if she had something to say, but no words came out. I nodded, something inside me settling. Yeah, that's what I thought. She finally looked at me, her expression shifting, panic creeping into the edges. Look, I didn't mean for this to what? I cut in. To get caught? She flinched. Then, like a switch flipping, her expression hardened. I haven't done anything wrong. I let out a sharp laugh. Oh, you're really gonna stick with that? She squared her shoulders, doubling down. I have every right to go out with a friend for my birthday. I don't need permission. I gave a slow nod, taking it all in. Got it. So tell me, when exactly were you planning to let me know you were sleeping with him? Her eyes widened. Bingo! Emily's face flickered just for a second, but it was enough. Enough for me to see the gears in her head turning, scrambling for a response. Excuse me? She said, her voice laced with fake outrage. I leaned in slightly, my voice dropping. You heard me. When were you going to tell me you were screwing him? Her mouth opened, then snapped shut. She blinked rapidly, like she was trying to reboot herself. Caught. And just like that, the mask slid back on. You're insane, she snapped. I am not. God, I can't believe you're even saying this right now. I smirked. Yeah? Then why do you look like you just got caught with your hand in the cookie jar? She scoffed, crossing her arms tightly over her chest. Because you're accusing me of something I haven't done. Do you even hear yourself? You sound completely unhinged. I tilted my head. Oh, I hear myself just fine, Emily. And I hear you too. Not denying it. Her lips pressed together. Too late for damage control now. Fine, she said, rolling her eyes as if she was already bored of the conversation. You want to play detective? Go ahead. But you're going to feel real stupid when you realize I haven't done anything wrong. I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolling through the pictures I'd taken from my car. I didn't even need to zoom in. There she was, leaning into Brandon's touch, her hand resting on his, looking at him in a way I hadn't seen in years. I held up the screen. Yeah? Then explain this. Her breath hitched, but she caught herself. A second too late. That doesn't mean anything, she said quickly. You're twisting it into something it's not. I let out a short laugh. Right. So, if I grabbed some woman's hand like this and looked at her like I wanted to devour her, you'd be totally fine with it. Her jaw clenched. It's different. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? Do tell. Exactly how is it different? I stepped in closer, lowering my voice. Listen, Emily, here's the deal. You've been acting off for weeks. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? The late-night gym visits? The sudden fixation on your phone? The way you've been pulling away while pretending everything's normal? I paused, watching as she shifted uncomfortably. And now, here you are, out with some guy I've never even heard of, touching him like he belongs to you. She let out a sharp breath, shaking her head. You're being ridiculous! I smirked. Maybe, but if I am, it's because you made me this way. Silence stretched between us before she suddenly snapped, her voice laced with anger. You know what? I don't have to stand here and be interrogated like some criminal. I came out to have a nice dinner for my birthday, and you're ruining it. I exhaled slowly, nodding. All right. I slid my phone back into my pocket and took a step back. No more questions. Her shoulders loosened slightly, too soon. Because I already know the answers, I added. Her body stiffened. I leaned in just enough to make sure she caught every word clearly. I know about the hotel. Her face drained of color. Gotcha. Emily went completely still, frozen in place as if she had just walked into an ambush, like a deer suddenly realizing there's a sniper's red dot on its chest. The hotel? Her voice came out automatically. Too quick, too defensive, too guilty. You're lying. I let her words linger in the air, watching as her breathing grew uneven, her fingers clenching around her purse strap as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. Am I? I tilted my head. Then why do you look like you've just seen a ghost? She scoffed, rolling her eyes, trying to regain control. Because it's absurd. What hotel? What the hell are you even talking about? I smiled. Ah, there it is. The last-ditch effort, gaslighting at full throttle. Reaching into my jacket pocket, I pulled out my trump card. A small, rectangular object, sleek, white. A logo printed in gold lettering. A hotel key card. Emily sucked in a breath so sharply she actually stumbled back. I held it up between two fingers. Recognize this? She remained silent, her expression frozen. Not a blink, not a word. Found it in your car, I went on, keeping my tone casual as if we were chatting about the weather. Tucked between the seat and the center console. Sloppy, honestly. You're usually more careful. Still nothing, just her eyes darting between my face and the key card, as if willing it to disappear. I took another step toward her. You checked into the Grand Willow last Friday, room 214. Ring any bells? She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. Before you say something you'll regret, I cut in. Just know I already called the hotel. I tapped the key card against my palm. Turns out they keep records, names, dates, room numbers. I paused, letting the next part hit its mark. And guest logs. Her body jolted as if I had physically struck her. Oh yeah, I continued, watching the last traces of color drain from her face. They remember you, Emily. And guess what? You weren't alone. She inhaled sharply, her nails digging into her arms. Wanna guess whose name was listed as your guest? My gaze locked onto hers, unwavering. A long silence stretched between us before she finally spoke, barely above a whisper. Brandon? I smiled, slow, cold. Ding, ding, ding. Give the lady a prize. Her breath shuddered out of her. It's not what you think. I actually laughed, right in her face. Oh, please. What exactly do you think I'm thinking here, Emily? That you and your good pal Brandon checked into a fancy hotel in the same room on a Friday night to what? Watch a documentary? Have a Bible study? Her lip trembled. I was drunk. It wasn't planned. I arched a brow. So, you're admitting it? She hesitated, then quickly shook her head. No, I mean, nothing happened. We just, we talked and I passed out. I exhaled slowly, nodding. Right, so let's break this down. I started counting on my fingers. You forgot to tell your husband about a hotel stay. You accidentally booked a room with a coworker. You drunkenly ended up in bed with him. I didn't, she started, but I wasn't done. And then, instead of coming clean, you hid the key card in your car like a teenager sneaking cigarettes. Silence, thick, heavy. She swallowed hard. I was going to tell you. I gave her a look so sharp it could have cut glass. No, Emily, you were hoping I'd never find out? For the first time that night, maybe for the first time ever, she had nothing to say. She just stood there, completely exposed, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. I could almost hear the frantic calculations running through her mind. Lie or confess, fight or flee. I was done waiting. Go ahead, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Tell me the truth just once. Try it. She clenched her jaw, her eyes flickering between defiance and panic. She exhaled sharply, hands trembling. It was a mistake. I nearly laughed. A mistake? Which part? I asked. The part where you met him at the hotel? The part where you lied about it? Or the part where you assumed I was too stupid to figure it out? Her breath hitched. I didn't plan it, okay? We were out with coworkers. I had too much to drink and... Oh, spare me the fake guilt, I cut her off. You expect me to believe you got so hammered that you just woke up in a hotel room with him? She hesitated. Yes, I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. You're such a bad liar, Emily. You know that? Her eyes burned with frustration. Why are you even here? She snapped, her anger flaring up suddenly. The fear had begun to fade, replaced now by defiance. I gave a cold smile. There it is, I murmured. Why am I here? I echoed. Well, let's break it down. My wife decided not to spend her birthday with me, told me not to wait up, and then had dinner with the man she's been sneaking around with. So, forgive me for being a little curious. Her nostrils flared. It wasn't like that. I stepped closer. Then what was it? She flinched but didn't back down. I just needed space. That made me pause. Space? She folded her arms. Yes, space. Things haven't been right between us. And I didn't know how to tell you. I tilted my head. So instead of talking to me, you spread your legs for Brandon? Her slap came quicker than I expected, a sharp sting across my cheek. I didn't react, just stared at her. The moment she realized what she had just done, she was the one who took a step back. I exhaled, rubbing my jaw. There she is. Her voice wavered. I didn't mean... I cut her off. Yes, you did. I let out a humorless chuckle. It's funny, isn't it? You can lie to me all night, but the second I call you out, you lash out. She swallowed hard. You're twisting everything. No, Emily. I shook my head slowly. You did that. I'm just finally seeing things for what they are. She let out a small, frustrated sound, dragging her hands through her hair. I didn't plan for this to happen, okay? I didn't wake up one day and think, oh, I'll ruin my marriage today. No, I agreed. You did it gradually. A text here, a little lie there, one small betrayal after another, until you didn't even recognize yourself anymore. Her lips quivered. I still love you. I inhaled sharply. You don't get to say that. She flinched. But I do. No, Emily, you don't. My voice was cold. Because you don't love me. You love the security. You love knowing that no matter how badly you mess up, I'll always be here to clean up the pieces. I took a step closer. You don't love me. You love the safety net I provide. her eyes filled with tears. That's not true. Then why are you still lying? Her breath hitched. I exhaled slowly. You know what? Don't even answer that. Reaching into my pocket, I pulled something out and placed it in her hand. Her gaze dropped, her expression crumbling. A thick, heavy manila envelope. Her voice was barely above a whisper. What is this? I watched her, my heartbeat steady with a finality I had never felt before. Divorce papers. Emily's fingers trembled as she clutched the envelope, her nails digging into the thick paper like she could tear it apart with sheer will. But she didn't open it. She just stared at it, her breathing shallow, as if staying still would somehow keep this moment from being real. But it was real. Her voice cracked. What? What is this? I didn't move, didn't blink, letting the silence settle around us, forcing her to sit in the mess she had made. You know what it is, I finally said, my tone eerily calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes after months of feeling like a fool. She shook her head quickly, gripping the envelope even tighter. No, you can't. This isn't. Oh, I can, Emily, I interrupted, and I did. Her chest rose and fell unevenly. You had these ready? I let out a slow breath, watching as the realization sank in. That she wasn't in control anymore? Yes, I said simply. I did. A small, broken sound escaped her lips. For how long? I tilted my head. Since the first time you lied about him. She flinched like I had struck her. Good. Her voice turned desperate. You don't mean this. You're angry, and you're trying to hurt me. I let out a slow, humorless laugh that made her shrink back. Oh, sweetheart, I said, shaking my head. If I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't be giving you divorce papers. I'd be taking my time, making you feel the same humiliation you've put me through. Her breathing hitched. Then why are you doing this? I stepped closer, closing the space between us, lowering my voice to a near whisper. Because I finally respect myself more than I love you. Tears pooled in her eyes, but I felt nothing. No pity, no regret, just a cold, empty clarity. This doesn't have to be the end, she whispered, her voice raw. We can fix this. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. Unbelievable. Even now. Even now. She thought she could smooth it over. No, Emily, I said, my voice final. You could have fixed this a long time ago, but you didn't. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but I was already stepping back, turning away, sliding my hands into my pockets. I wasn't going to fight for someone who had already thrown me away. She called my name, her voice breaking, but I didn't stop. Didn't look back. She had spent months choosing him over me. Tonight, I finally chose myself. And I walked away. For the first time in years, I walked away from her. No second glance, no hesitation. Just the cold pavement beneath my feet and the sound of Emily's shattered voice calling my name behind me. But she wasn't calling for me because she loved me. She was calling for me because she was losing. And Emily never handled losing well. Emily despised losing. I rushed to my car, yanked the door open, and slid into the driver's seat, my pulse pounding in my ears. My hands clamped around the steering wheel, but for the first time that night, it wasn't out of fury. It was relief. I released a long, steady breath, letting the reality settle in, allowing it to fully sink in. It was over. Or at least, that's what I thought. Then my phone rang. I didn't even need to glance at the screen to know it was her. I let it go to voicemail after the first ring, the second, and the third. Just seconds later, a text appeared. Emily, please don't do this. Just talk to me. I stared at the message, my jaw tightening. Talk? Now she wanted to talk after everything? Another message followed. Emily, I made a mistake. Please don't throw everything away over one mistake. I scoffed. One? The sheer delusion was unbelievable. Then another message popped up. Emily, you don't understand. It wasn't just about him. It was about me. About us. I shut my eyes, counted to 5, and forced my shoulders to relax. I could just ignore her, drive away, let her sit alone in the ruins she created. But then my phone buzzed again. Emily, I swear I'll tell you everything. Just give me 5 minutes, face to face, please. I hesitated, not because I was curious, not because I wanted to hear her out. I didn't. But something about that last message felt different. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't remorseful. It was something else. And against my better judgment, I put the car in park, took a slow breath, and stepped out. I didn't trust her anymore, not even a little. But I was going to hear exactly what she had to say, and somehow I knew I wasn't ready for it. Each step I took was measured, controlled. Emily stood frozen beneath the dim streetlights, arms wrapped tightly around herself like she was bracing for impact. Her eyes locked onto mine, shimmering with unshed tears. But I wasn't buying the act. Not anymore. You have 5 minutes, I said, my voice flat. Talk. She swallowed hard, gripping the divorce papers with trembling hands. For a moment, I thought she was about to beg. But then something in her changed. Her shoulders squared, her expression hardened. And what I saw wasn't regret. It wasn't guilt. It was resentment. That was when I realized this wasn't going to be an apology. I didn't cheat on you because I stopped loving you, she said quietly. I cheated because you did. I blinked. What? She let out a sharp breath, shaking her head. Not physically, but emotionally. You left me behind a long time ago. A laugh escaped me. Cold, bitter, humorless. That's rich, Emily. Really original. So now this is my fault? Her jaw tightened. I'm not saying I'm innocent, she said, voice unsteady. But don't stand there and act like our marriage was perfect before this. Like you weren't already halfway out the door. I stared at her, my pulse thundering. You're unbelievable. Am I? She whispered, voice trembling. When was the last time we actually talked? When was the last time you looked at me the way you used to? Like I was enough? I exhaled sharply, pressing 2 fingers to the bridge of my nose. Emily, for months I asked you what was wrong. I asked if you were happy. And every time you said, I'm fine, I lowered my hand. So what now? I was supposed to be a mind reader? Her lips quivered. I didn't know how to say it. I scoffed. But you knew how to spread your legs for Brandon, huh? The slap came fast, just like before. But this time, I caught her wrist before it landed. She gasped, eyes widening. For a long, tense moment, neither of us moved. Then, slowly, I pushed her hand away and took a step back. No, I said, voice cold. You don't get to hit me and play the victim. Not after everything. Tears finally spilled down her face. I didn't mean, yes, you did, I cut in. You meant every word, every lie, every time you looked me in the eyes and decided to betray me. That was when she broke. Her face twisted into something raw and wrecked, something ugly and shattered. I don't know who I am anymore, she whispered. I stared at her, feeling absolutely nothing. That makes 2 of us, I muttered. She let out a shaking sob, her fingers clenching around the divorce papers so tightly, her knuckles turned white. And then she said the one thing I never expected. Don't leave me. I should have felt something. A flicker of hesitation, a sliver of sympathy, anything. But I didn't. I just stood there, watching the woman who had torn our marriage apart clutch a stack of papers, like they were the only thing keeping her upright. Don't leave me, she whispered again. I let her words sit in the cold night air where they belonged. Let them sink in. Then I asked the only question that mattered. Why not? Her breath hitched. She hadn't expected that. She thought I'd soften, that I'd cave the way I always had. But I wasn't that man anymore. She stammered, shaking her head. Because we can fix this. I arched a brow. Fix what exactly? Her voice wavered. The fact that I stepped closer. What part are you hoping to fix, Emily? I demanded. The lying? The sneaking around? The way you looked me in the eyes every night and lied straight to my face? Tears streamed down her cheeks, but I didn't move. People make mistakes, she whispered. Marriages, real marriages, survive things like this. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. You don't get it, do you? She swallowed hard. Get what? I took a slow step forward, forcing her to look at me. Surviving means pushing through the toughest moments together, I stated, my voice unwavering. It means working through obstacles, not creating them. You didn't fight for this marriage, Emily. You let it decay while you entertained some random guy behind my back. She shook her head frantically. That's not true. I tilted my head slightly. So if I hadn't caught you, would you have ever told me? Her breath hitched, and there it was. The truth. She already knew the answer, and so did I. Leaning in just a fraction, I lowered my voice. Would you have told me, Emily? A sob she had been holding back finally broke free, raw and unfiltered. Her shoulders trembled violently, but I felt no sympathy, not even the slightest bit. She wasn't crying because she loved me. She was crying because she was losing me. I turned to leave. Please, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Please, don't do this. I stopped at the edge of the sidewalk, glancing back at her one last time. You already did. Then, without another word, I got into my car, shut the door, and drove away. The road stretched out ahead of me, empty and endless. But my hands clung tightly to the wheel, not out of hesitation, not from second guessing my choice, but because, for the first time since this all began, it was over. No more waiting, no more questioning. No more searching for the flaws in her explanations, the contradictions in her words, the little inconsistencies that never quite added up. She had finally admitted what I had known all along, and I had finally walked away. I thought I would feel relief, liberation, some surge of satisfaction that I had ended things on my own terms. But instead, all I felt was emptiness. It was as if the version of me who had fought for her, who had loved her, who had stood by her, that part of me had died tonight. The worst part? I had no idea who I was without her. My phone vibrated. I didn't need to look. I already knew exactly who it was. Still, I glanced down anyway. Emily, I love you. Please, just come back so we can talk. My jaw tightened as I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat like it was something toxic. Talk? There was nothing left to say. I had spent years giving her chance after chance, years ignoring every red flag, convincing myself that if I just loved her enough, supported her enough, fought hard enough, she would never betray me. And yet she had. Easily. Another vibration. I exhaled sharply, refusing to check. Then another, and another. By the fifth buzz, I knew she wasn't giving up. I snatched the phone, swiping to open my messages. Emily, I messed up, okay? But you're making a mistake too. Emily. We've been together too long to just throw it all away like this. Emily, you still love me. I know you do. Emily, just say something, please. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Then, without hesitation, I tapped on her name and blocked her. No warning, no final words, just silence. For the first time in years, I was done letting her take up space in my mind. And for the first time in years, she had no way to reach me. My grip on the wheel tightened as the weight of finality settled over me. It was over. Completely, truly over. But now, the question that haunted me was, who was I without her? The road stretched ahead, dark and quiet. The only sound was the steady hum of my tires against the pavement. No buzzing phone, no frantic messages, no more begging. No more lies, just silence. For the first time in years, she was gone from my life. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times. What it would feel like to finally be free of her, to cut the invisible threads she had wrapped around me so tightly that I had nearly forgotten what it meant to stand alone. I thought it would feel like victory. Instead, it felt like mourning. Not for her. Not for the woman who had so effortlessly, so carelessly betrayed me. I was grieving for the person I used to be. The man who had once believed in her, who had spent years building a future with her, trusting her, defending her. The man who had once looked at her and seen forever. That man was gone. Emily had destroyed him. And in his place stood someone I didn't quite recognize yet. I pulled into my driveway, shut off the engine, and just sat there, staring at the house we had built together. The porch light flickered, still broken from when she said she'd get around to fixing it. She never did. Just like she never fixed us. I stepped out of the car. The night air was cool against my skin as I walked inside. The house felt too quiet. Her shoes weren't by the door. Her perfume no longer lingered in the hallway. Her laughter, fake as it had been, was gone. And somehow that was when it truly hit me. She wasn't coming back. I wasn't waiting for her anymore. Letting out a slow, unsteady breath, I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of whiskey, and sat at the table, staring at nothing. After a long moment, I picked up my phone, scrolled past Emily's name, blocked and forgotten, then paused on a contact I hadn't seen in a long time. Ryan, my best friend. The guy I had drifted from over the years, too consumed with keeping Emily happy to notice I had let everything else slip away. I hesitated. Then I pressed call. It rang twice before he answered. Dude? His voice was groggy, confused. It's almost midnight. Everything okay? I exhaled. Yeah. Actually, for the first time in a long time, I think it is. A pause, then softer. She finally did it, didn't she? I let out a short, bitter chuckle. Yeah, she did. Ryan sighed. Man, I'm sorry. I swirled the whiskey in my glass, watching the amber liquid catch the light. Don't be! Because as I sat there in that quiet, empty house, something unexpected happened. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something new. Hope. Not for Emily, not for fixing something that had been broken beyond repair. Hope for me, for whoever I was about to become. And that was worth everything.